age of Watchmen, a team of individuals pooling their talents and abilities come together to bring analysis, reaction, and comedy to the fold. This is their chronicle. This is Accounting Arc.
All right, I guess I'm going to kick us off today. And today we are busting the myth of working for a Big Four, because we've all been kind of hearing a lot about this pipeline issue and somewhat, I don't know if I would call it the fear of all of this hard, crazy work, and because maybe it's rightfully to be afraid of that. And so we thought we would touch today on, like, what are the other options besides working for a Big Four? And maybe I'll start off because I actually did work for a Big Four. When I started in the late 90s, I worked for Coopers & Lybrand, and I was through that transition of becoming part of eventually becoming PwC. But the big difference for me was I was with a smaller, I was in the Honolulu office. Our practice was, I think it was 80 people total. So even though we were Big Four, we worked like a smaller or maybe mid-sized office. And I got to touch a lot of things. So I actually got to do financial accounting. I was in what was called the dual track, so financial accounting and IT audit. Financial audit and IT audit. And then I also got pulled into the consulting side. So I got to do a little bit of everything, which I think really shaped what I did and my ability to work in consulting now. So yeah, definitely Big Four, but not Big Four. How about the two of you? What were your guys' experiences coming through?
Well, it was interesting. So I definitely, there were many reasons I didn't end up going. It was Big Six at the time that I was there, but yeah, and in fact, I mean, a lot of the people I graduated with went to Arthur Andersen because we were a big Arthur Andersen recruiting school. But for various reasons, that wasn't my path. I ended up going with a small firm, and it was great because I really got opportunity to do a lot of things. I at the time I was graduating, I really didn't know like what type of accountant I wanted to be. I had no idea that I was ultimately going to end up in a technology path, but I got so much exposure being with a local firm because I did nonprofit audits, I did government audits, I did corporate tax, individual tax, I did strategic planning. I really got my hands on a lot of stuff. And frankly, that's also where I got exposure to technology. So, for me, being able to work in an organization where I was able to touch a lot of different things exposed me to a lot of great experience that, kind of helped me to figure out what I did and probably even more importantly, what I did not like to do.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I graduated from the University of Nevada in Reno, which is, kind of outside the places where Big Four had offices at the time. They did try to recruit me to Las Vegas, to San Francisco, to LA offices. But I chose to stay in Reno when I first graduated, and I went to work for Grant Thornton. So close to Big Four, not quite. Our office also functioned more like a regional office would, in that, we had only about 100 people on the team in Reno. We did a ton of casino audits, lots of tax around that. But then we also did weird stuff like I did the tax return for a large dairy ranch that did like meat, which was interesting, very fascinating, right? So I got to like learn all these weird things there as well. And the way Nevada law was structured at the time, I had to basically in charge an audit to be licensed. So everybody had to have audit experience. You didn't pick audit or tax your first couple years. You needed both. And so, I ended up being, in the tax department officially, but I was doing busy seasons were all audit and then tax at night. And then deadline driven as well, depending on what they needed help with. And I also learned a lot about what I didn't like. Like I learned I didn't like doing trust or estate tax work at all.
Good
That
point.
was not my favorite thing. I learned I was not a really huge fan of ranches. Like it was interesting for sure. But when I went out to visit the client, I was like, yeah, it smells like poop. Not really my favorite, but I also learned I loved casinos and cash heavy businesses. I thought it was fascinating the way that they had to do internal controls and the way you audit it and like the different counts and drops and watching it all and surveying it. And I learned a lot about that industry because it's fascinating to me. And so, I think your point about getting exposure to a lot of things is important as well.
Yeah, and that's so much fun because I think there's so much that, especially and this is even beyond just the accounting path, that when you're in college, you just haven't been exposed to such a large majority of what is going on in the world, and I think I'm assuming I've had a lot of conversations with college students, but they put a lot of pressure on themselves to think like they need to know what that path is. And the reality is they likely have not even had exposure to the path that they will ultimately
Yeah.
gravitate to. So, having an opportunity to work in like a regional size firm, whether it's big four or small, but give you all those different exposures, I think is just such a great way to figure out that longer term path and what you do like.
Well, honestly, when it came to recruiting, I remember this very distinctly. The Big Four showed up to meet the firms night, of course, out of the other offices, and they showed up with people that were all dressed identical. Their booths were all like perfectly pristine. Everybody that was brought to the table was very good looking and very good at communicating. And that was scary to me. Like that wasn't like it didn't feel real. It felt like they put together this team of like recruiters that was supposed to go like make everyone feel really good and be happy. Whereas the more local firms and the regional firms and even like Grant Thornton or McGladrey that also did show up there, they showed up with like real people who were like, hey, it's busy right now. Like we have a deadline in a couple weeks because, they brought some real tax people and they always did meet the firms in September. And they'd be like, it's just telling you the truth. Like this is how it goes. But these are the fun things. We get to talk to people. They were just more real. And it wasn't as, like
So I think that
creative.
when you said that, I was like, join the Borg and become one
Yeah,
of us.
right. Resistance is futile. But yeah, no, it was a very interesting approach. But of course, like our professors were all like, this is the way you do it. Like you're top of your class, you're smart, you're like president of Beta Alpha Psi or whatever you are. Meanwhile, I was treasurer of Beta Alpha Psi, which we all know is like if you're the biggest nerd, you're going to be the treasurer of the accounting
Of the
society, not the
accounting.
president. Yeah, but it's like they tell you like this is success, and that is the only definition of success. And I foundationally disagree with that.
I definitely agree with you there. The thing that I found the value in the Big Four, because I don't want to say that there's not value there. The value in a career with the Big Four to me is if you're going to end up being, or your goal is to either be a Big Four partner, or if it's to be the, say, CFO of a public company, because it's so driven towards that. But I don't think you can replace the exposure that you get, and kind of echoing what Byron was saying, because I was with a smaller office, we got to touch a lot of different things, a lot of different industries. You got to see a lot more, which really helped me figure out my place. Well, what I ended up figuring out, I don't like audit. I don't like IT audit either. And I wanted to be in consulting, but getting to work with the industries, I figured out I really like working with nonprofits. And I really actually did a lot of government as well. Made me figure out, hey, I can actually make a difference in government too by helping and being more on the consulting side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's a really good point.
it definitely I was like the opposite of Liz in college. I did not qualify for Beta Alpha Psi. I was like the reject of like my GPA wasn't good enough. I didn't do like our tax professor like sponsored the VITA program with I didn't do that because I was busy doing other stuff. Like there were so many things, like so many boxes I failed to check that like I literally like just felt like this scrub in college. And all the professors were like, big four, big four. Like that was like they almost kept like a tally of how many of their students went big four because it was like they pumped their fist and they felt accomplished because of that. So it you know, for all those students out there that maybe aren't the treasures of your beta alpha size, like don't be discouraged because you know there's really great opportunities for everybody coming out of schools.
Oh, absolutely. I had a professor sit me down and tell me, um, A students go to top 10 firms, B students go to small local firms, and C students go to the government. And if you get less than a C, you'll never be a CPA.
Wow.
That's what he sat down and told me. And like it stuck with me for a long time, in that like that was the measure of success that I was given, right, as a student. And now, I mean, I run a
Crazy.
team of misfits. Some of us came from top 10 firms, some big four.
Yeah.
Some of us came from small local firms. Some people went to industry and worked their butts off in industry and came up
Yep.
as, you know, amazing controllers, CFOs, and now they want to spread that knowledge to more companies and help clients and kind of embark on the client service journey. But when you look at like the backgrounds of my friends in the accounting space and the ones that I find most successful, Byron being included, it does not always equate to big four or a top 10 firm or, you know, large international experience. It's really dependent on who you are as a person, first off, what you find happiness in and joy in, and where success equals to you. Because my definition of success is probably not the same as your definition of success, or, you know, anyone listening.
Sure. I mean, you know, and it's actually interesting. You, as you were mentioning that, two things came to my mind. One, my internship was not in public accounting. My internship was with a very large hotel and restaurant conglomerate that was near my college. And, you know, it was kind of cool to actually get that exposure of, you know, the accounting related to, you know, 16 hotels and 5 restaurants and everything that was going on there. And then also, you know, Anup Mehta, the past chair of AICPA, you know, he was never in public. He started out as an intern with SSAI and eventually, you know, retired from there as CEO. But that was, you know, a government contractor who, you know, worked close with the government. And, you know, he literally started out as an intern and went all the way to the top of the, you know, billion-dollar organization.
And actually, if you think about the change in focus and what we're doing in accounting today, it's really this move into advisory. And if you only have this very narrow experience, which is what I'm hearing a lot now from those that are going into Big Four, or even in talking to people, the recruiters from the firms where people are trying to exit Big Four and come into the other firms, that in Big Four, you're so focused and so narrow by design, because you have to get into the industry, you have to figure it out, that when you come out of that, it's very hard to be able to look at other things. And as we go into the advisory side, the value that I think I bring as a consultant is that I've seen all of these businesses. I mean, I think the longest audit I was on was maybe 2 or 3 weeks long. It's not these year-long things that you see with some of the Big Four or other larger firms. It was 2 to 3 weeks. So every year I saw a good 20, 30 companies and how they operated and what they were doing right and what they were doing wrong. And that's what really gives me the value or the ability to go into other companies and say, hey, you might want to think about this, because I've seen this work on other places.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about breadth of experience. And also, if your definition of success is like highly specialized in something very particular, you know, finding a way to get to that team in a Big Four is going to give that to you, right? So it's like, it depends on the individual and what people want. And it's not, you know, all that my professor told me, and I'm sure professors are still telling students right now, which is if you're an A student, you have to go that route. That's just it. If you don't have Big Four on your resume, nobody's going to hire you as a controller. That's BS. I hire controllers every day, and most of them don't have Big Four on their resume, and most of them are qualified to do extremely good things.
Well, yeah, and gosh, I hadn't even thought about it until you said it. When you first said, what your professor had let out, like I'm thinking about, those B and C students who aspired to go public, but I know some badass A students that actually went into government who, and I know you do too, Liz, and like that are like, doing big things in government, and that it's just such awful messaging. I can't believe your professor said that. It upsets
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have a conversation with him now about it, but unfortunately he passed away.
But you guys are also making me think. So I was just at the National Pipeline Symposium, and what was represented there was definitely much broader. So we had the AGA, the Association of Government Accountants. We had the IIA, the Institute of Internal Auditors, was represented. The IMA, the Institute of Management Accountants. And these are all additional career paths that are within the accounting profession as well. So it's not like CPA is the only path. There's all these other, each of those has their own certifications, some of them multiple certifications that they offer, where it's definitely a valid alternate path. I don't even know if I want to call it an alternate path. It's an additional path, because there isn't only one path or even a primary path. I think the profession has become so broad that we need to look at all of these other areas, and students should figure out, what are you passionate about? Is it government service? Is it audit? Is it tax? Some people might actually like that. Or is it working with other types of businesses?
Yeah, no doubt. And kind of to all of our stories, you're not going to know until you get there. So like, don't beat the heck out of yourself like before you've ever arrived trying to pick that path. Just like go where it feels right, and without these stigmas of what maybe a professor has indicated is supposed to be your path to success. And you just have to kind of like jump in and just get exposure to these different things, and something will stick.
I'm kind of curious to what you guys think about, a lot of times when we talk about accounting and the accounting profession, we're focused on accountants. And immediately people think it's accountants. But I feel like our profession has really grown and expanded to become more inclusive of other professionals. Do you guys feel like that's actually happening? And is an accounting career perhaps also valid for people that aren't accountants?
What other professionals do you mean?
Well, I'm kind of looking, but Byron's a good example with a lot of IT in there.
Mm.
So that overlap. And as we look at like cyber, and whether it's cyber advisory or cyber assurance, right, SOC reports, that really leverages IT and the IT skills.
Oh, it absolutely does. But I think like holistically, there are a lot of different pieces of a business and a different pieces of what happens around accounting, including finance and technology, treasury, and the foundation we have with accounting programs gives us a really good insight to understand how that affects other things. Like my master's degree is in technology because I think you foundationally have to understand tech for the future of what we do. Like we can't do our jobs without utilizing and implementing secure and robust systems, right? Like it just doesn't work. So I think you have to understand both to be successful for the future. And I know a lot of accounting programs have integrated information around those things. Not all of them, but a lot of them have. So yeah, I think absolutely anything that's touching the numbers technically is in the realm of accountancy, even if it's not directly accountants, right?
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and there's also, is something else that where a lot of CPAs also end up is in one of the many associations that's supporting the profession. I mean, think about the number of CPAs employed between, all of the different associations, the AICPA, the IIA. I mean, you can go through the list, and there are an incredible amount of people doing like really amazing things that have accounting paths, accounting tracks, and now they're supporting the profession in maybe not a traditional accounting way, but in a way that they get really excited about. So I think there's just like it's really difficult to box in, somebody who starts out as a quote unquote accountant, because there are many just different opportunities that get created.
Yeah, well, and our profession is huge, right? There's like 670,000 CPAs registered in the US alone. Like, that's ridiculous when you start thinking about that from a professional standard perspective. And that's only people registered as CPAs. That doesn't include accountants that are not registered. And
yeah.
there are tons and tons of those as well, because, as in industry, you don't necessarily need a CPA. It's not a requirement to do the job well or to learn the things you have to learn to do the job well.
And when you bring up industry, the trend we're definitely seeing there is, I think, that the CFO also oversees HR, oversees IT. So having more of that broader view of things, which might be achieved. Liz, you did it through a master. I was a double major in accounting and information systems. So I did it early on, which also helped me meet my credit hour requirements to sit for the CPA exam as well. So if people start to double major and bring some diversity of experience, because I'm also thinking like even in marketing now, you need to understand the numbers, the reporting, is the marketing effective? That's all numbers related. So kind of being able to sit between that and leverage data analytics to look at effectiveness marketing campaigns, seeing some overlaps there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think like in school you can get a lot of exposure. Like I did a double major in accounting and finance. And then I think I was one class shy of an econ minor, but mostly because I just found economics really fascinating. But I wasn't willing to stay an extra semester to finish that. But yeah, I think like getting exposure to all of those things is really vastly important, and statistics, like the baseline of data analysis and the baseline of understanding systems is understanding statistics.
Yeah. Well, and one of the other like paths that we haven't talked about yet. I mean, both of you. Well, I guess I fall in this too, but business entrepreneur ownership. I mean, there are so many accountants, CPAs that go on to either establish their own firms or other businesses. I literally just listened to a How I Built This podcast, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. I think the brand like Viero or something, like a men's sports clothing brand. He was actually a Big Four CPA out of college, the founder there. Like there is, for people who think that in the future that they may want to own or operate a business, like the accounting path really sets you up. And I'll, kind of to your point earlier, Donnie, also gives you exposure to a lot of what's going on out there, and also educates you on what not to do a lot of times too.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And I think, to further that point, like accounting is the lifeblood of a business, right? So if you don't foundationally understand the numbers or the finance side of it, then it's very difficult to run a business well. And we have a lot of clients that don't have accounting backgrounds, and they hire us because they need that advice to even be able to profitably grow their businesses or keep them afloat in some cases.
As you talk about the numbers, I think the other part that people don't realize is a big part of our profession is this understanding of risk and controls, which goes beyond just finance. So how do you actually assess risk and understand risk and quantify risk, whether that's kind of getting some back into the numbers? And then how do you effectively mitigate that risk through the design of controls? Because when I think about the advisory work that I do, a lot of what we're doing is helping our clients be more successful. And with that, it's what initiatives are you planning? And let's figure out where the risks in those initiatives are, whether they're technology related, people related, change in business, new business. And let's figure out how much risk you're comfortable taking, in which case then if there's more risk than you're comfortable with, let's figure out how we actually mitigate that risk and what do we need to implement to be sure that either way you're successful in the end.
No doubt.
So I would circle that back to anyone graduating from school and trying to figure out what they're going to do, in that when you approach the career path that you're thinking about, think about how do you measure success and how do you measure the risks associated with getting to that success, and which path gives you the most direct path there, and eliminates the risk associated with it, right? And really think about it as a plan, a strategic plan, like you're taught to think about in school, right? Versus the advice I'm getting is do this and take the highest dollar amount offer I can potentially get because that'll lead to the most success in life. Well, that's not true. It just depends on your path and how you define that and what you're looking at.
Well said.
Well said. I'm going to caveat that because you said the most direct path. And I think part of Byron's message, though, was you might not know your path. You might have to meander and try different things out and figure out what it is that you actually do like. And I actually feel like my career was actually the same because I did a little bit of financial, a little bit of IT, a little bit of consulting, a little bit of traditional IT. And then from there, I figured out, I really wanted to be in advisory. So whether you're that direct, maybe that's the A student, got your whole plan, this is your whole life, and you're going to go in that direction, or you're kind of figuring it out. Either way, the foundation of accounting is so important for anything you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think, and in my case, I actually took what I thought was the direct path because I wanted to be a partner in a firm. And I thought like a local CPA firm was the direct path for me to get to partner. So my caveat to it is just be open to change course,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And like, let it go with you. I mean, I think, you definitely kind of nailed me a little bit there, Donnie, in that I am a very motivated individual and I am extremely ambitious and I definitely have my sights on different things and go for it. Right. So yeah, for me, like focusing on a direct path is important, but I also have entrepreneurship in my blood. Right. So like my whole family was entrepreneurs and I grew up in businesses and understanding like what that means and what that looks like. And I think ultimately I knew I'm not going to fit in at any company long term because I have way too many ideas and I don't fit in boxes well. And so, my goal was get really great broad base experience and build my own thing from that. And that's what I've done. And some days I think it's wildly successful. Some days I think I'm a complete failure, but I think that's the path of entrepreneurship, right? So I've chosen that for myself. But I think, each individual has to think what keeps them happy and how do they define success? And I think for me, it was a goal. For a lot of people, it's, interesting work, good working hours, getting to travel. There's different measures of success than just like the traditional old school financial and title.
No doubt.
So I think our final answer ended up being, it depends.
Yeah, there's always an it depends.
There's not just one path. It depends on what your goals are, what you want as success. But knowing and embracing that unknown, I think is so key. And that's what the foundation that accounting gave to all of us is really being able to have that ability to figure it out and then pursue our dreams.
No doubt.
Yeah. And keep focusing on that every day. It's like, okay, what can I eliminate that doesn't bring me joy? What can I add in my life that I think is really interesting and gets me closer to this goal?
Well, with that sage advice, I think we should wrap today. So thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you figure out your path to success.
Thanks, guys.
The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. Find out more at our website, www.improvetheworld.net. And if you're interested in sharing your own transformation stories, please contact us there.